So, all right, being 8:30, let's kick off this session. And I'm quite excited because we've got Temi here. We call him Temi. It's a shorter for Temito. And we're going to be doing this webinar on Mr. Little and the Kanban Musketeers. Quite excited about this. And so a little bit about Temi. Temi and I have been working together for the last few months, and he's actually an accredited Kanban trainer. Plus, he has played multiple roles also at different organizations of an agile coach, a scrum master, transformation expert. So he's got a lot of roles that he's played and experience with him. So quite excited for that. Temi, the next slide. So on behalf of Leadership Tribe, that is us, that we are hosting this webinar, our objective at Leadership Tribe is mostly to support various organizations with their tools, with their roles, with their tools, techniques, and most importantly, the people and their skills which drive value. And on the other hand, what we also do is that we work with various organizations, the leaders, coaches, focus groups, and intent is to share the wisdom of the tribe. We create a bit of sticky learning for the individuals, teams, and organizations. And I think for me, the most important part is about giving back to the community. And the webinars that we do almost 4 times a month is our way of giving back to the community. So we've got a few little guidelines on Zoom of how it's going to work because we're using the webinar tool. So we've got a little manifesto out here for us. We are all here to learn together. And if you notice on your screens, you will have this option that when you want to use the chat box, you've got the option of sending a message. We request you to select panelists and attendees when you send a message. This is so that all the other participants also get to see your questions or any comments that you add in as we go through the webinar. This webinar is going to be definitely recorded, and the slides that Temi presents, we will definitely share that with you, and it will be emailed to you, I think, on Monday, later in half of the day. And if you've got any questions, again, please drop it in on the chat box. Otherwise, if you've got questions pertaining to the topic, you also have this option for Q&A. And that is actually, to be honest, a little more easier than the chat box, because then we have all the questions in one space so that we don't end up missing any. And in case we run out of time, we can definitely reach out. You can reach out to us directly and we can answer your questions for you, or we can also do another webinar as a follow-up, depending on how this goes. And our webinar is going to be for about 45 to 60 minutes. So on that note, let's kick it off. Temi, I shall hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, RT. Good afternoon, good morning, good day, everyone. Before we start, I'll just I'll launch a poll that you will see. If you could just answer the question there. It's a very simple question. So that is live now. Let's give a minute for everyone to answer. Okay, thank you for the answers so far. Okay, it's going to end quicker than a minute. That's good. Fantastic, almost there. So while that is going on, let's talk about the topic of the day. So I titled this Mr. Little and the Kanban Musketeers. So first things first, since it's titled Mr. Little, let's find out who is Mr. Little. So I said here that Mr. Little, that is his picture. Who is he? Actually an MIT professor. And in 1945, he put together this law that we now call Little's Law. Now, how did this law come about? Basically, he observed in a coffee shop while studying the queuing system. He observed some peculiarities about, what was happening in the coffee shop. Basically, he noted the amount of time it took for a customer to be served in the coffee shop and the number of customers in the coffee shop. So you observed and realized that there was a correlation, there was a relationship that was actually quite predictable and useful as well. So basically his formula came about from this observation, which is this equation. Now, if you're good with math is my favorite subject in high school. So that's L equals to lambda W. So breaking down the equation, L in his observation was the number of customers in the system. So looking at the coffee shop, how many customers did he see? That's what L was. Then the lambda was the arrival rate. So the rate at which customers walked into the coffee shop. Then W is the time spent in the system or spent in the coffee shop. So you might be wondering, why are we talking about this law? What does it mean to me in today's world? So let's break it down. Let's make this concepts contextual for what we're doing right now today. So here we say, I wrote here that these might be strange concepts, but let's look at it. So Little's law, we said L equals to lambda W, right? So bringing it into this context, L, we say is the number of customers in a system. Now, if you then look at a system properly, especially when you look at agile and delivery and all that, that can also represent the work in progress, the amount of work in the process or in progress in the system, right? So what we call the WIP. Then the arrival rate can also be equal to the departure rates, which actually is equal to the throughput. So that can then be the throughput of the system, how much stuff gets out of the system at a particular time or in a particular frame of time. And then W is equal to the time spent in the system, which is the cycle time. So time spent from start to finish in the system. So basically looking at Little's law in its original form, it can be rewritten as your work in progress equals your throughput times your cycle time, right? Now, for any law in humanity or in human systems, there are some assumptions. So let's point out the assumptions. The assumptions that make the law hold to be true, right? Now we say, first of all, the first assumption is the arrival rate is equal to the average rate of departure. In other words, basically for this law to work, the system must be balanced. And for one of the requirements for balance is that as things go in, things walk out. So basically the arrival rate is equal to the departure rate. That is one. Then also all tasks entering the system will eventually exit once completed. That's another assumption. Then also there will be no large variances in the WIP between the beginning and end of the reference period. So in other words, your WIP will not change much. It will stay about the same. And I'll explain why I use the term about the same. Then also it says here that the WIP average age should remain the same, neither decreasing nor increasing, right? So the average WIP should remain about the same. Then also we say here that the consistent units must be used to measure cycle time, WIP, and throughput. So if you're using per hour, it should stay per hour throughout. If you're using for every 2 weeks, it should stay for 2 weeks. And if you're using the number of tickets or whatever it is, just stay consistent throughout. Now, one important thing to note is that Little's law is a law of averages. That's why I mentioned the fact that your WIP, it should remain, your WIP average age should about the same. So it's a law of averages, right? So here we look at, so who are these musketeers? Let's introduce them. So the first being the work in progress. So we say here that this refers to total amount of work items in flight. So things that have started and are in between it being started and it being completed. And so this can also be defined as the stories that the team is currently working on. So if you're using, you have a visualization of your board, once you have your to-do from in progress all the way to just before done, that is what is in progress or what is in process. So that's your WIP. Then your throughput, this is defined the number of work items that enter the done step per unit of time. So how many stories are in done? Is it every 2 weeks, every week, every day? That unit of time. Or like I wrote here, or number of items or stories completed in a time interval, e.g. in a sprint, in a week, in a month. That is your throughput. Then cycle time, the third musketeer, is a measure of the elapsed time when work starts on an item until it's ready for delivery. So basically, once you start work, it starts to count till it's completed. That is the cycle time. Now, normally, cycle time and lead time in this context, I'll use them interchangeably. I'll try not to use lead time, but basically, I'll define that time period as cycle time. So for this conversation, That is cycle time. So then the question you could ask is, so what does all this then mean? Why are we talking about this? So basically what I'm trying to show you here is that Little's law shows us that there's a relationship between these three musketeers. And basically what we're saying is that if you look at them as three ends of a string. So you have that string. And then when you pull one, there would always be a response in either 1 or 2. Now you might also wonder, so what does that mean? So that means we're saying that if you focus on whip and you increase it, it will lead to an increase in cycle time and hence a reduction in throughput. So from Little's law, what we're saying here is that there's a direct relationship between, so your whip is directly proportional to your cycle time and inversely proportional to your throughput. So basically, if you increase your whip, your cycle time will respond and could also respond and increase, and your throughput could also respond and reduce, right? Now, like I said earlier, there's some assumptions, right? So that's why I say here that better put, if you want to increase throughput, you need to reduce whip, right? This could possibly lead to reduction in cycle time, which would be double win, right? Now, interestingly, should I say this now? Okay, no, let's go ahead. We'll look at a bit of an example, right? So look at this example. John owns a small coffee shop, right? He wants to know the average number of customers queuing in his coffee shop to decide whether he needs to add more space to accommodate more customers. So then he looks at his current data and he's, okay, you say currently his queuing area can accommodate no more than 8 people, right? So you can only take 8 people in the queuing area. So people can wait outside, and once one person goes out, one person walks in. So that actually is a balanced system because only 8 people are allowed at a time. So we look here. So John measured that on average, 80 customers arrive at his coffee shop every hour, right? He also determined that on average, a customer spends around 6 minutes in a store. And in this context, we're using the time of an hour. So 6 minutes is 0.1 hours. So like we said, consistency in the units. So given these inputs, John can find the average number of customers queuing in the shop by applying Little's law. So right, remember what I said, law of averages? So based on Little's law, on average, he has 4 customers in a particular time, right? So now the question is, you say here, Little's law shows that on average, there are only 4 customers queuing in John's coffee shop. Therefore, he does not need to create more space in the store to accommodate more queuing customers. So let's ask a question. What about if at this point we say we increase the number of people? So his store can take 8 people, right? So let's say we're able to move things a bit around and increase the number of people in the store. So let's say we increase the number of people in the store. Right now, he has 4 customers. Let's say we increase it to 8. An example. What happens to the work in progress and what happens to the throughput? Right? And what happens to the lead time, particularly lead time and throughput? What happens to them? So first of all, we say currently we're looking at 4 customers. So let's flip the equation around, right? Remember what we said, that the Little's law states L equals lambda W, right? And the L is, we said here that the L is your whip. So here the whip is 4. Your lambda is your throughput. Here it's 40 and your cycle time is 0.1 hours, which is 6 minutes. So if we assumed, or if we took it in this equation now, okay, we don't know what's going to happen to the W, which is the cycle time. So W now becomes unknown. So remember, let's remember the math equation. L equals to lambda W. So that means W equals to L over lambda, or L divided by lambda, right? So L, remember, is your whip, and your lambda is your throughput. So currently the whip is, we've said 8, we're increasing to 8. So if you divide 8 by 40, your whip then becomes 12 minutes, or 0.2 hours. So you can see by multiplying the number of customers, we've now also increased the whip to 12 minutes. So customers are spending 6 minutes before. Now, on average, they will spend 12 minutes. Now, like I said, it's a law of averages. So that means on average, 12 minutes. It's possible someone could spend 2 minutes and then someone else could spend 14 minutes. Do you understand? So that's what Little's law shows us. So what's the point of this discussion? We say here that Little's law shows that we can shows that we can show the impact of the amount of work in progress on how long it takes us to finish or complete our tasks. Right? That's one. Two, it gives us enough information to know the implication of the interplay between work in progress and throughput and cycle time, and it helps us to guide us to optimize the same. And then also, most importantly, we can maintain a stable system if we hold the assumptions as true, right? And like I said, finally, Little's law isn't little. So you may ask the question, so what does this mean for at work? So I work in a agile team, I deliver work. And we may not necessarily be able to meet all these requirements of the assumptions. Well, one thing we found over time is that even with the assumptions not holding true, something is consistent. The more you do your work in progress, the longer it takes, your cycle time, and the less you get done over a period of time, your throughput. So even if the assumptions don't 100% hold all the time, we found out that the more you do, the longer it takes. So basically, if you increase your WIP, your cycle time will increase and your throughput will reduce. And that's why anytime I do trainings, I always tell people that one of the secrets of Kanban is your WIP limiting. If you're able to control what is in progress, you can adjust your process to improve your throughput and reduce your cycle time. But if you have no hold on your WIP, then the rest will yo-yo about. So I'd like to end with this slide. I always tell people that what you focus on is what you get. So that's why I put in this slide that if you optimize for busy people, you will get busy people. But if you optimize for finished work, that's what you will get. And that's one of the things about Kanban that I love so much. Kanban talks about limiting WIP. And when you limit WIP, why are you limiting WIP? You're limiting what is in progress so that you can focus on finishing work as opposed to just starting work. So because Kanban focuses on finished work, what you always get is finished work. And so I would say here that you get what you optimize for. A Kanban system is optimized for finishing work. So that's why I always emphasize that the WIP limits are so important. Not just having them, making them explicit, but adhering to them as a team. They will increase your productivity. I've had it increase my productivity of a team by over 300% because it works. Okay, so okay, let me see the results of our poll. So of our poll, 65% of you use Kanban currently and 35% of you don't. Okay, thank you very much for that. So I'm actually done with my talk. So now let me see, I think we have a couple of minutes. Let me put a timer on because the last time I overran.
Temi, we've got a lot of time in hand today. So what I was thinking was there are a couple of questions already in the Q&A if you have a look.
Oh.
So we can tackle that. Then we'll quickly go through the couple of other slides that we have. And then we have the entire forum open for any more questions because Temi is the person when it comes to talking about WIP and anything to do with Kanban. So you can shoot at him and ask him any questions you've got.
Okay, I can see a question here. So how do we manage multiple recurring tasks on Kanban board? E.g., say if there are 20 or so small tickets that a person works on in a day, how do we manage them? How do you manage this on Kanban board for measuring our cycle time? Really good question. So now you have over 20 tasks that are currently running, right? So the question is, are you loading up your board with all 20? Or are you allowing, so for example, if they are small items, right? If they are small items and it's 20 tickets for one person in a day, I would say you may be able to categorize the items in a different way that doesn't have to fall under 20 tickets. So for example, wake up, brush my teeth, have my bath, wear my shirt, wear my trousers, wear my shoes. That could be get ready in the morning, 1 ticket. So I've taken 6 tickets to become 1 ticket. So it might be that might help because you might have to decide as a team what level of granularity you're comfortable with that captures the work and still allows you to monitor progress, right? So that's one thing I think you will do. And then also, yeah, so I think that then when you look at your cycle time, like I said in the talk, your WIP, your cycle time, and your throughput, they have that equation. So when you look at your cycle time, right, you might determine, okay, this is what you're targeting. Then you look at how much you're currently doing in the system. If it's too much, it's impact on your cycle time. So that's why WIP limiting is very important. So you need to find out, or check what WIP limit can work for the people that are in that team, so that you get consistent work out. Because what you are doing right now is like it's like when you go for a buffet. If you have a massive plate the first time you eat, you're going to be full really early. What Kanban encourages is taking a little at a time, so you can get more done over time. Because when you look at that Little's Law equation, you find that when you have a lower WIP compared to what is existing, your throughput goes through the roof. It goes higher because they have an inverse relationship. So basically, the less you do, the more you get out. Okay. Let me see, Michael. That would be true for Scrum as well. That would be true for Scrum as well. Yes, WIP. Yes, Scrum has its own version of a WIP. Scrum's version of WIP is what you call batch sizing. So in Scrum, you empty the board to refill the board. So the capacity of that board that has been determined by the team is effectively the WIP. Now you can go further and introduce some Kanban practices to your Scrum by adding WIP limits to your columns or to your flow states. But generally, Scrum's idea of WIP limiting is via batch sizes, your Scrum, your sprint backlog, that is WIP limited. Okay, then what is a good way to apply WIP limits? That's a very, very good question. There are a couple of things you can do. What I've done in the past is to observe the flow of work. And then when I see that work starts to delay in certain columns, I then look at what has passed through, and I determine with the team, telling them what I'm trying to do. We can come together and agree, okay, let's try something. So if I've done with the Scrum team before, where they said, okay, let's try 1-to-1 or 1-to-1.5, 1-to-2. So we did that for the first sprint. And then we looked at, we tweaked it from time to time until we got a certain number that was okay. The secret behind WIP limiting is that you want enough work for people to be working, but not so much that they're overburdened by the work at the same time. So there's a sweet spot between both, where you can actually arrive at it together. Okay, thank you. In general, what is the time frame that we take to measure the throughput and cycle time using Kanban? It's up to you. You can determine if you use any application. You can see you want to check every week, every 2 weeks. It depends on what you want to measure and why. Okay. Then okay. How does Kanban help me to do more work? Because it seems it hammers on me doing less work, and less work, less profit. Well, the secret is, if you look at it this way, like I gave the example of the buffet. That's how the human mind works. If you go to a buffet service and you load up the first plate, you will get full really quickly, and then you spend the next couple of hours at the buffet just drinking water or trying to get food to go down. But if I take a little every time, you actually you eat a lot more. It's the same thing. It's where the human mind functions. When you take small bits of work like I showed in that slide that you can see, optimize for flow with slack. Why? Because if you look at a fully occupied system, is like a road with 100% cars on the road. 100% utilization is traffic jam. There's no space for innovation, no space for improvement, and no space to increase speed. But when you have slack, you have space for innovation. You have space to increase your speed. So look at it this way: you do something, you can check and see, did I do it the right way, and improve the next time. But if you are stuck 100% utilization, you're always busy and doing so much, you just be passing the thing across. You won't have time to stop and think, should I do it this way or this way? Can I improve by doing this way or that way? You won't have this time or space. So that's why even when you look at manufacturing processes, when manufacturing talks about 100% capacity utilization, they actually refer to 70% of capacity. Because even for machines, they don't expect machines to run 100%, they will break down. So why not human beings? So that's why the secret is to do less, but to do it consistently. So you are flowing through less that way. So eventually you do more. Thank you. So I can see, how do you calculate WIP for cross-functional team? Good question. It's a team discussion. You try something and you see if it works. Like I said, the aim, what you're looking for is, we're trying to get enough work working through the system, but not too much that the system is stalled by the work. You want the work to flow through, to keep on flowing. Okay. Yes, someone says stop starting and start finishing. That is it. That's what WIP limits gives you. It gives you that hyper focus to finish and not just start. Because what a lot of people do, they celebrate the fact that they started the work. So you have the system loaded up with work at the beginning, but nothing comes out at the end, because they optimize for starting work and not finishing. Okay. Then thank you, PD. Then thanks, Timmy. I agree with your point of view. We're also trying to leverage automatic ticket creation and as it's recurring, so that we process. Yeah. Okay, perfect, nice. Okay, then which one is Kanban only used for support projects? No, Kanban can be used for anything. At this heart, Kanban is an improvement framework, so you can use Kanban for anything, for software, for development, for IT, for HR, for finance. You can use Kanban for anything. Kanban will sit on your process and improve it. If you go through the Kanban course, you'll find out that there are actually Kanban practices that you can implement. We even have, so Kanban can be used for anything, basically. Okay. And if a squad that uses Kanban and handles, let's say, 4 projects, which has a capacity of 25, 25, 10, and 40%. Okay. So how we plan that devs are working in that percentage only. So how do you plan? So 4 projects, capacity of 25, 25, 10, and 40. So what you could do is, for example, that means you are saying you plan 25% of your effort on one, 25% of your effort on the other, 10% of your effort on the other, and 40% of the effort on the other. I hope I'm getting that right. So what you can do is to determine also like a WIP limit for either of the columns. You can do WIP limit for the columns, which eventually becomes a WIP limit for the whole board. And then you can determine from that WIP limit the percentage that you assign to each swim lane. So for example, if in development, we agreed to a WIP limit of 12. So for 25%, which is quarter of that, you say 3, then 10%, you say 1.2, and then 40%, you will say 4.8. So that way you manage the WIP limits per category of work, which equals WIP limit of the whole thing. So that way the effort percentage stays the same throughout. Okay. Then how to reduce WIP if we have multiple products with different volumes and less resources. How to reduce your work in progress when you have multiple products and different volumes and less resources. Well, now for management, if you tell management you want to reduce how much you are doing, they would assume that you don't want to do any more work. But if you can show them, not necessarily argue, but show them the cost in cycle time. So basically, the more you do, the longer it takes. So if, for example, it costs £10,000 to do this work, if you increase how much work you're doing, it could double your time. So if you show management that you are willing to spend 10,000 on this work, but the amount of work you're giving us is going to double the time it takes to do the work, it's going to cost you £20,000. Are you okay with that? Because the most important thing is we will do the work we're given to do. But if they are not okay with how long it takes, then they have to actually work on what we are doing in the first place. Because, for example, if they're okay with paying double the cost, that's fine. We'll do the work that we have to do. It's just that it will take longer to do. So that's one thing. And that's what I love about Kanban, because Kanban uses objective data. So if I were you, I'll look at my current cycle time and then use that as using Little's law, show them that this is what we currently have in progress. And if you look at our system, this is our throughput. The more you give us to do, the less that gets done and the longer it takes. Are you happy with that? If they say yes, then you've done your part. Okay. Then how to identify WIP for an 8-member Scrum team? This That's a team discussion. I would say look at your past history. Look at how work has been flowing through your boards over the last couple of maybe months or weeks or sprints. And then if I were you, I'll come to the team and discuss that this is my plan. So what can we say we want to do per column? And then they will try something. You know, since you're a Scrum team, that means you have retrospective. So you can try something with the idea that we're going to try and see if it works. So at the retrospective, you can come back together and go, did it work? The aim is to ensure that there's enough work going through the system, but not too much that you're overburdened. So did we achieve it? And if they say no, there wasn't enough, you can increase whipping it by 1 or reduce it by 1. But you know, you keep tweaking it per sprint until you get to that sweet spot. Okay, so what are my thoughts about having 2-week sprints with the Kanban system? My question is why? It depends on what you want to achieve. So I'm context aware. So I know that obviously you try to apply some of these things in their purity, but you also have to observe the context. So if, for example, where you are, the business demands new updates every 2 weeks and you're using Kanban, then follow the 2 weeks and deliver as requested. So it doesn't really matter. Okay, in the agile world, few people having thought Scrum and Kanban can't work together. It's not possible. Is it really true? Because I personally feel that they really work well. Well, the last webinar that we did, we actually talked about that. So I think we titled it "Can Scrum and Kanban play in the same playground?" And at the end, we determined that yes, they can. So they work, like you rightly said, they work very well. Sorry, disclaimer, my kids are back from school, so there's going to be some noise that might filter through. Apologies for that, but their kids, keep quiet is not necessarily their strongest point. So yeah, like you rightly said, they work very, very well together. So maybe you can check out the previous webinar and see the discussion on that. Okay, are the defects found during development can be shown and tracked on the Kanban board itself and hence should be part of the WIP? Very good question. So when you say defects tracked in development, so you're saying bugs caught by the tester, right? So the way Kanban does it, now I know in some frameworks you have, they have different ways, but how Kanban does it is this. Because in Kanban, we believe in feedback loops and learning from doing, empiricism and all that. So what we say is, on your board, right? When you track a bug, maybe the tester catches a bug, what Kanban says is the original ticket should stay where it is. Then you create another ticket that addresses the bug, and then you move that until the engineer that's meant to do it sorts out the bug. Then that ticket then meets the parent ticket, and then they're both going to done. So that way, what you can do is, like I said, Kanban does a lot of feedback looping and learning. So in one of the cadences, you have what is called a blocker clustering. Now, also, what I've done in the past also is to, from time to time, when we are doing a retrospective, we'll also look at the bugs, identify the bugs, and then what the plan is to see what can we learn from the bugs that we caught in development. Is there any learning that we can feed back into the team to improve our process? So that's why we capture it so that we can learn from it. Because if we don't capture it, we won't learn from it. So, and then should it be part of the WIP? Yes, it should follow the WIP process. Unless it's something that has to be expedited. And you know the expedite is above the WIP, but it follows the WIP process as well. Okay? In an agile transformation, we were in a situation where we need to fit a small group of shared services, platform, upgrade, and patch in an agile team. We group them to be a Kanban board. Problem, nature of work is different, and hence if someone goes on leave, cycle time increases, or we can move item to the backlog. Apologies for that. So yes, so different kinds of work. And then if one person goes on leave, cycle time increases. Okay, so what you can do now, because there are different kinds of work, it can bring up another conversation further down, which is how do we share knowledge, right? So how do we share knowledge can be part of your conversation at your retrospective. But then what you can do is that then if that happens regularly, that someone goes off and your cycle time is impacted immediately, then what you can do is reduce your WIP. So maybe if I were you, I'll reduce it by 1 and see if, because you can't stop people from going on holiday. And you can't, because they've gone, take the item back into the backlog. Because Kanban, we favor forward moving work and not backward move. So the tickets must go forward in one direction. We favor one directional ticket movement, not so you don't take a ticket in and take it back out, because it will skew your metrics. So we favor it going forward. So if you have that constantly impacting your cycle time, I'll say reduce your WIP by 1 and then see the impact of that. Okay. Can you touch on class of service and the purpose of it? Okay. So classes of service, the way it says for Kanban, we don't believe, we look at the tickets that you do and we see that it can actually potentially be a mixed bag of different kinds of work. So we find ways to define it so we can differentiate and optimize. Because the aim, what we understand is that the different kinds of work require different kinds of attention. So hence the idea of class of service. So class of service is a way of defining how we treat an item. So basically, I can use this example that one of my good friends put up on the Kanban University website. And he said the class of service can be looked at, if you look at the airplane system or flight system. So class of service, for example, you have first class, economy plus, business, and all those classes, right? Now, no matter who you are, whatever you pay determines what class of service you are given. So first class means I go through, business class can mean something else, economy can mean something else, and a stowaway means something else. So different way that this airline system treats the customers. So that's the class of service. So the most common archetype that we use in Kanban is the archetype that answers the question, what will happen if I don't do this now? So the cost of delay. So we have the expedite, we have your standard, which is a normal ticket, we have your intangible, and then we have your fixed date service, fixed date ticket. So basically, but what we can also use for class of service, you can use it to determine, maybe we attend to different customers. So we can define our board with those customers as our classes of service because we treat them different. We might have a customer that requires the work to be done immediately and one that doesn't mind it being done at the end of the month. Or you can have, maybe you have, you offer a service. So when someone returns an item, you treat it different from when an item comes from the factory. So that could be 2 different classes of service. So that's how Kanban does it. Because the reason is, part of the Kanban practice is visualize. But we visualize for the sake of effective management and optimization. But you can't optimize a mixed bag of data. So we specify the data so we can optimize it and optimize the flow of its value through the system. Okay. Then how do we set WIP limits when the project and members are new? Have a conversation. Remember, we're agile, we're pragmatic. So agility is akin to pragmatism. So the thing is, I would say, try something with the team, explain to them the aim of what you're trying, and then try something, work on something, arrive at a number together, and then observe the impact of that number on the team, and then iterate from there. Okay. So what is a good frequency for reducing WIP? Will reducing WIP often skew the historical metrics? It will have an impact to a certain extent, but remember, you're working towards something. So your data will be impacted, but the most important thing about data is the meaning before the metric. So is you understanding what has cost the metric and what you're aiming for that matters the most, not necessarily the numbers you get. So if, for example, we had reached a particular sweet spot and we decided to increase the WIP by 1 more and our cycle time increase, we know what we did that brought the result. That's the most important thing. So then we can know as a team, okay, let's take the WIP down again and see if our cycle time improves. Then we do that. Then, there are other factors that can affect the cycle time. And the WIP allows you space for that. So it might be the team getting better at collaborating. Now, you cannot collaborate if I'm always picking something new. So collaboration comes up when I suddenly have nothing to do, but there's work in the system. So the question then becomes, rather than creating a new ticket or bringing a new ticket in, why don't you help somebody complete their work? You remember, like someone said in one of the questions, stop starting and start finishing. So you see, the WIP limit drives that question. What can you finish? What can you help finish? Okay. So yeah, Timmy, I owe you. Oh, thank you very much. Absolutely smashing answers to all my questions and highly practical and applicable straight away. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I'm glad it was of use to you. I'm very glad. Thank you. Whew, I think I need some water now. I think I finished the questions. Okay. Any more? Is it okay? Let me look at the chat. Has any question been sent to me as the panelist? That's my question.
I don't see any questions that have come directly to the panelist section, unless you want something at the private one. But yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay, how do you reduce a burnout team? Oh, wow. That is a very powerful question. Okay, so the first thing is to understand that a burnout is usually because people can't say no to work coming in. So they just keep on taking in whatever is coming in. So the first thing is reduce your whip. Have that open conversation at your retrospective to go, what is happening here? Because a burnout team, you would have observed, I'm sure you knew before they hit the issue of burnout, you had observed that things started to lag a bit. Because I'll tell you why. You see, when you watch the movies, superhero movies, they even have the times when they show up as superheroes and have the time when they just live as normal human beings. So the same thing with a team of people. If they keep working at their optimum every time, like I said about factories, nobody plans the manufacturing plants to work 100%. It will burn out. So it's just what that means that if your team has burnt out, they've been working 100% for a long time. I know human beings can sustain a level of productivity for long. So what you need to do is to reduce what is currently going on. And then be open and honest with the team to go, I want to help you guys be better, but I don't want you guys to burn out. So what can we do that is comfortable enough? Now, in some organizations in the UK, what they do is they actually even force breaks. When I say breaks, what do I mean? So they'll tell you Friday past lunch is personal time. They'll say it's development time. So what they're saying is leave your computer, leave the work, and you can go and learn something. So they actually even force them to go leave your computer. Don't continue doing that. So what you can do if you are the Scrum Master is to create slack times. So like for one of my teams I did before, I did knowledge share sessions where specialists would talk about what they're specialists in to the team members. All the team didn't know is that I was trying to create slack in the system. So instead of them always coding away, they'll have a time every 2 weeks, maybe like an hour and a half, where if I'm good with Java and we're doing Java work, I could come and present Java and they'll ask me questions and all that. But it kept them away from the computer for that period of time. So like I said, the secret thing is, first of all, start reducing the whip. Reduce the whip immediately. But have that open and honest conversation with the team. It would help. Because when people burn out, they know that they're burnt out. So just own it and say, okay, we're here now. What can we do? Okay. Thank you. I think that's the last question. Let me just get my water quickly.
Yep. As of now, looks like that is the last question. However, we still have a little more time in case someone suddenly has a new question that's come up. In the meantime, what I would like to do is quickly run you through some of our development path and upcoming programs that we have. And suddenly the poll result has come in. All right. Okay, so we have a Kanban class that is coming up in the month of August, and Temi is going to be the trainer for that. So in case you want to learn a little more on Kanban and maybe in case bring in your teams for that, we are happy to support you on that. And you can write to us at hello@leadershiptribe.com, and either Chitra or Devante would get back to you with whatever request that we receive, or any questions that we receive for some of the courses that we provide. And we also have courses that we offer for the Agile Coaching Bootcamp, which is the ICP ATF and ACC classes. There are discounts that we offer, and currently we have the effective 20 offer that is there that you can claim and get a little more of a reduction on the price using that code. And the dates, I think, for these classes are in the month of July, and it would be from the 13th to the 16th and 19th to the 23rd. And definitely, nice, good time, which supports people from all across the globe. And we also offer the ENT and CAT bootcamp, which is the enterprise level. And again, there are discounts available using that effective 20 code. So do write to us at hello@leadershiptribe.com. And in case you have any other questions also, we are happy to support all of you and reach out to you accordingly. Any other questions that anyone has? We've got a few more minutes that we can use to make the most of that. Otherwise, we can call it a day.
Okay, there's a question here.
There's a question.
Yeah, how do you deal with project deadlines and flow in Kanban? With deadlines, we tend to have too many WIP. Now, that is management's reaction. It's a knee-jerk reaction to, we need to deliver this fast, so we put more work in. But I'm sure if you've observed, it takes you longer eventually. So how Kanban addresses this is this. First things first, we look at what we call our lead time distribution, right? And we look at our data and look at the certainty. So what Kanban does that I really love is that using your lead time distribution data, you can actually determine from your past history how long your work will take with certain level of precision. So like we always advise in Kanban, you give your limit between two things. So if you look at your lead time distribution chart, if you use some applications, it will give you the 85% percentile and 95%, 50% and all that. So I usually say, if the project deadline requires 100% certainty, then you look at the chart and say, okay, 85% certainty we get it done in 7 days, 95% certainty we get it done in 10 days, based on our history. Now, if that then doesn't work, if that time is beyond the deadline, it's a question of, okay, then you limit what is in progress. So you focus solely on that deadline. So like most project teams, they're working on multiple projects at the same time. So the thing is, if you limit your WIP and increase your focus on that thing, you might actually hit the deadline. But then if the person you are serving isn't happy with those dates, it's one of two things. Either you reduce your WIP, or the person extends the deadline to match your historical data. And that's, like I said, that's one thing I love about Kanban. Most of the other frameworks, that question will be very hard to answer. You have to actually do and try to take a guess. But Kanban uses objective data. And you say based on our past history. I wish I could show you. Artie, can I show them lead time distribution chart so I can explain? What do you think?
Sure. We've got 10 minutes more, so you can use that.
Beyond the plan of the class, but since we're here, let's look at it.
We are here to learn after all, so if you've got the time, why not?
Just find an image for it. I can show you what we're talking about. Looking for a good one. Okay. So let me share
the screen.
Yeah. Okay. Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yep.
Okay. So now if you look at this, so this is an example of a lead time distribution chart. Now there are many applications that will give you the lead time distribution chart. I think Jira gives a fair one, but it's not as good as. But there's GetNave, there's Kanbanize, there's Swift Kanban, and yeah. So these ones, they give you good. So this is an example. So if, for example, okay, this is on Alexis Zegloff, nice, really nice person. So normally your lead time distribution charts, you have your days here and the lead time on the vertical axis, right? And the percentage certainty, as you can see, there's 99%, 95%. So the applications will give you the percentiles and the days here. So it's something to look at. Let me see if I can find one that actually has days along it. No, I don't want that. Apologies for that. Where is it now? Oh, come on. Okay, good. Let's see if I can find one that actually has the days along with it. Aha. Okay, so you can see here now. This shows you the lead time at the bottom, and this shows the number of shipments. So normally, okay, this one is a bit incomplete. Normally, you find one that will show you percentiles. So what you do is, like we always crack a joke in the Kanban community. When someone asks for how certain you are, the question is, okay, are you willing to risk your mortgage on it? Each person says no. So that means you want 100% certainty or close to 100. Now, the more certainty you want, the longer the duration of the cycle time. That's just the honest truth. But if it's a strict deadline, then give them as far as possible, 85, 95% certainty, and then see if that time works with the deadline based on your historical data. So like I said, you can use GetNave, Swift Kanban, Kanbanize. Those ones will give you good lead time and cycle time data. So you can use that to then deal with your strict deadline. Okay. Thank you for that, really good, and thank you for the questions so far. Really, really good questions. Okay, Artie, over to you.
Sorry, my video was taking time. All right. So on that note, I think we can call it a day. And thank you so much for coming in. And
one last question.
Oh, there's one more question.
Someone said, "What's the difference between lead time and cycle time?" To be fair, the terms have been used so many times in different ways. Let me just clearly define what they are. There's one that determines the time between an idea striking, ideation, and then delivery. Another itemizes the time between when work starts on the item in the system and when work finishes. Now, in some places, they use the first one I mentioned as lead time. So we have this request, it comes into customer service, and then we deliver it. Some people would define that as lead time. And then some define cycle time as the time between when the project team starts with the work. So in other words, when the Scrum team or Kanban team start working and when they finish. But like I said, the most important thing, the arguments have gone on for so long that what we've agreed in the Kanban community is whichever one you're using, just define it in the context on that day. So you tell people, this is what I mean by lead time. This is what I mean by cycle time, so that the arguments don't continue, because they've used them so many different ways. Okay, thank you. Final question, Artie. That's it. Yeah, I'm done.